Good morning. I'm Kenya McDuffie, at-large council member and chair of the council's Committee on Business and Economic Development. Today's Monday, February 10th, 2025. We're convening this roundtable in person at the John A. Wilson Building and via Zoom. The time is 9:33 a.m. and I'm calling this public roundtable to order. Today, the committee will receive testimony on two measures: PR 26-22, the Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club Disposition Extension Approval Resolution of 2025, and PR 26-34, the National Links Trust, Inc. Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2025. As a reminder, witnesses will each have 3 minutes to provide testimony and should remember to mute their microphones. If they are testifying virtually when they are not speaking, please mute your microphones. Additionally, just as a note for planning purposes, for those who are testifying, we have several witnesses who've signed up to testify this morning, some in person and some virtually. Out of respect for each of the witnesses and my colleagues, we're going to follow the agenda in order. And we would just make sure that folks who are present are listening for their name so that they could testify when they are called. We will move expeditiously to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to provide their testimony in an order in which they have signed up. As always, the committee invites all witnesses to submit testimony in writing to the Council Hearing Management System webpage. Let me check to see anybody joining us virtually. Okay. No, none of my colleagues have joined us for this hearing, so we're going to proceed with the first measure on the agenda, which is PR 26-22, the Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club Disposition Extension Approval Resolution of 2025. This proposed resolution was introduced on January 6, 2025 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on January 21st, 2025. This proposed resolution would extend the time for the mayor to dispose of the Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club from December 5th, 2024 to December 5th, 2026 to allow for the redevelopment of the existing vacant structure. The council previously authorized the disposition of district-owned real property located at 261 17th Street Southeast, also known as Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club, to Morningstar Community Development, LLC in 2022. The disposition will allow for the redevelopment of a currently vacant structure into 35 for-sale residential units, of which 11 will be affordable units. The project would also include over 2,000 square feet of community serving space. With that, we have one public witness who signed up to testify this morning. We're going to call Stan Boudry. He's testifying virtually. He's not present with us. Okay. All right, we will turn to our monitors for virtual witness. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us virtually. You can begin your testimony. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Councilmember McDuffie and staff as well. I thank you for the opportunity.
Just to let you know, your video is not on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll restart the clock for you. Turn your video on. There you go. We can see you now.
Good morning. Sorry for that, Councilmember McDuffie. Thank you for the opportunity. You summarized the project and the process, and so I will avoid reading my written testimony that I submitted to the record. That covers much of the summary that you already provided. Briefly, I will say that since 2022, the team has been working diligently on this project, pursuing funding, which includes public funding via the Department of Housing and Community Development solicitation process. As part of that, the project has passed preliminary underwriting, but one item that was outstanding that needed to be completed in order to get to move on to the next phase of funding is the zoning. The property, as you mentioned, was formerly a Boys and Girls Club, and so the zoning was for it to be a recreational recreational use. That required a map amendment through the zoning commission. The map amendment has since been approved and recorded. It's official as of the end of 2024. So we've got the map amendment in place, and we have filed the necessary BZA documentation to get a minor modification necessary to allow for the parking access and a number of other things. So the zoning has moved forward expeditiously. And but it has that is a process, as you know, and so that's taken some time. And then we are additionally continuing to seek funding for the project via all the necessary and available sources, including, I said, DHCD, federal funds, and then traditional debt and equity sources. So with that, we appreciate the committee's and council's consideration to continue this project moving forward for the next 2 years. We believe that that'll give us the requisite time to finally convert this from a vacant and an underutilized asset of the districts into much needed affordable housing in the Eastern Branch neighborhood, and make this property again a vital part of that neighborhood. With that, I'm available for questions, and I thank you for your time.
And thank you for your testimony this morning. I'm going to turn to my colleague, Ward 7 council member and member of this committee, Wendell Felder, for a brief opening statement, and then we'll have a round of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, as well as members of my colleagues. I'm excited to express my support for the Boys and Girls Club disposition extension approval resolution of 2025. This bill represents an important step forward in our community as it allows for the successful redevelopment of the Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club located in our Ward 7 Hill East community. As the Ward 7 council member, one of my key priorities is ensuring that our economic development projects come to fruition and that they are designed to benefit all of our residents. We have an incredible potential here in Ward 7, and this resolution is about tapping into that potential, bringing in investments that create affordable housing in our community space. And this project isn't just about converting a vacant building into affordable housing. It's about building opportunity to create jobs and growing our small and local businesses. I believe that this bill will make a real difference in how the Ward 7 community grows and prospers. So I'm asking my colleagues to join me in supporting this measure as well. Mr. Chairman, with that, that concludes my opening remarks.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. Don't have a lot of questions for you, Mr. Boudry, but I do want to ask a couple of things. Starting with where things are before the Board of Zoning Adjustment. Just if you could, again, tell the committee what you filed and when you expect. If you all have any dates of any upcoming proceedings or expect any response from the BZA, I'd love to get that on the record.
We have an upcoming BZA.
If you can hear us, Mr. Vaudry. Okay. Are you there?
I'm sorry, I am here. My video cut out for a second.
We heard you last say, well, actually, you might as well start that entire.
I'll start again that we have the zoning commission has taken action. That action has been recorded and it is complete. So the map amendment is now official of record. The BZA matter We filed some time ago. We have a hearing that is scheduled in March. We've requested that that hearing be delayed pending this action because we've now run out of time under the authority of the LDA, so we can no longer proceed as the representatives for the property until this is approved.
Okay, and just to be clear with respect to where things are, have there been any material changes in the term sheet since the council approved this disposition on December 6, 2022?
There have been no material changes to the term sheet or the plans. We continue with the same basic structure and plan.
Okay, and then 35 for-sale residential condominium units,
That is correct.
11 still to be affordable?
That's the minimum.
That-
That's our minimum mandate. We're hoping to exceed that if we can secure the additional funding.
Okay, and what's the unit mix of the affordable, 11 affordable at minimum? What's the unit mix in terms of affordability?
I don't have the affordability matrix in front of me right now. It is unchanged. It was. You're looking for the number of bedrooms, or
I'm looking for both. I'm looking for the number of bedrooms to have a sense of if, and I guess your position is that nothing has changed in terms of what you testified to previously. It still should be 2 3-bedroom units, 11 2-bedroom units, and 22 1-bedroom units. Is that
that is correct? Thank you for that.
correct? Okay.
Yeah, no changes from the previous program.
5 units out of below 50% AMI and 6 units out of below 80% AMI?
Correct.
Okay. And where are things with your 35% subcontracting plan?
Right now, the development team is 100% DC CBE certified. So we're on target to well exceed our 35% mandate, but the general contractor is a DC certified CBE general contractor. It's MC and Build. The architect and engineering team is also a DC certified CBE with all points, and as well as the legal team right now. So all consultants and contractors are DC CBE certified. As we progress, we'll be adding to the team, but the team members right now are all certified CBE.
Okay, and are these the same team members today that were a part of the plan, subcontracting plan submitted to DSLBD a couple of years ago?
Yes, the same team thankfully has continued to work with us, and we haven't had to modify it.
Okay, and then as you're well aware, the council previously authorized the disposition of this property to another entity that ultimately determined that their development plan was no longer financially viable. Given the market to date, just as context, you previously testified before this committee that you plan to pursue funding from government sources. You mentioned that you applied to DHCD. Did you apply to any other government agencies? I think I remember some mention of the DC Housing Investment Platform.
We have had discussions with DC Housing Finance Agency and their team to be sure that we're aware of and that and accessing any available sources through HFA. They've given us indication of interest in participating in the project, and so as we continue to advance it, I expect that HFA will participate. Yes.
Okay, but you have not heretofore received any sort of commitments in writing or otherwise from a DC government agency or quasi-governmental entity for funding?
Those have expired. So we got letters of intent from HFA and other and bank financing for the application to DHCD. And then but they're no longer active or valid. We had to complete the zoning, and then we'll come back and reply and apply again.
What specifically, you mentioned DHCD a couple of times. What specifically did you apply to DHCD for what type of funding?
Housing Production Trust Fund dollars that would they have a couple of different vehicles that support for sale housing. So that it was the coming from local funds as well as Housing Production Trust Fund.
All right, and I believe your testimony, you mentioned that you all applied for funding in 2023 and passed preliminary review at that time, but were unable to proceed to closing prior to the approval of the zoning action mentioned?
That is correct.
Got it. Okay, so talk to me about viability of this project. If we approve this for another 2 years, I'm not saying you have a magic wand, but what should we expect in terms of trying to identify funding? You mentioned specifically in your testimony, you're looking for at the necessary and available sources. You mentioned DACD, we just explored that. You mentioned DCHFA, we talked a little bit about that. You mentioned federal funds. You mentioned private debt and equity. What's the viability like given the current market, and what should we expect to happen over the next 2 years?
So we are working actively with our council member. He testified his support and his team has been helpful in working with us to identify strategies to move it forward in the challenged environment. I mean, you're well aware of the interest rate environment, which has affected home buyers and the level of affordability for individual homeowners because mortgage rates are up. So that impacts the purchasing power of the potential buyers. So we continue to sort of track down all the the various sources. We have it's a capital stack. So it's sort of each level is dependent upon the others to make the whole stack work. Right now, I think you and the others on council are well aware of DHCD's constraints and not knowing the availability of DHCD funding over the coming years. That the program that we had put together was heavily dependent upon DHCD sources. So assuming that those sources may not be available in the near term, we are pursuing other avenues of funding. And as of this testimony, I can't testify to you that I've identified all of the available sources to build the project. I remain confident that we have the team working on this diligently, pursuing opportunities and sourcing the funds. And to the extent that funds are identified, we have the capacity to build the project. There is a significant private investment required. That private investment is committed, but that prior investment alone is not adequate to build the entire project. So
I'm well over my time. My last question, though, just so I can turn to my colleague, Councilmember Felder, and not have to do another round. Just assuming that you identify funding for this project, what is the timeline you would like to see in terms of completing this project?
Once we break ground, our construction schedule now is 16 months.
Okay.
And then this is, as indicated, it's for sale. So the sales schedule is market dependent, but we expect, based upon the price points and the existing demand for housing in the neighborhood, that the sales will proceed very quickly. I think that they'll mostly be pre-sold before the completion of construction.
Thank you for your responses. I'm going to turn to Ward 7, Councilmember Felder, for a round. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a lot of my questions as it relates to CBE, the composition of the units, feasibility, financial feasibility, you kind of were spot on, and you answered a number of, or you asked a number of the questions that I was going to ask. My additional questions is more so followed, or rather geared towards community input and support. So I know the building has been vacant since 2007. There's a lot of excitement as it relates to the possibilities of redeveloping the building to affordable housing. Has there been any concerns from community members in terms of where things are with the project?
The community has continued to express concerns, as you highlight. I know you've tracked with this council member as closely as anybody, but the community continues to express concerns about the fact that the building is not always secure and people getting access into the property doing vandalism or damage. But other than concerns raised with regard to the current condition and lack of security around the, sort of keeping the windows blocked up and things, there's not been significant concern regarding the plan or the design as we present to the ANC and to the condo association next door and other neighbors. The plan has been well regarded and received, and there's a couple of issues with regard to access of the alley and how we circulate around the site for vehicular traffic and pedestrian sort of protections. But I think we've dealt with those, and the ANC continues to support the project.
Yes, to my understanding, the last time I checked, Commissioner Ashley Shapiro was supportive of this. You kind of answer my last question was as it relates to parking. Have you had any follow-up conversations with DDOT pertaining to parking? I know that was a concern specifically as it relates to on-street parking in that area.
Yeah, the building itself doesn't lend itself well to lay out underground parking. I mean, it was built as a swimming pool underground, so access to it is difficult. We're only able to fit 11 underground parking spaces into the building as it's configured. That's more than what DDOT is saying that we're required to have, but it's a compromise for the community, which would like for us to have even more parking. So we're balancing that right now. I think DDOT would say that we need fewer parking spaces, and I think sort of neighbors would like us to have at least as many as we can fit. So that's where we're at right now.
Well, thank you. That concludes my questions, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you for your testimony this morning. We're now going to turn to our government witness for this measure. We're going to be turning to Pam Fretzel-Bain, Director of Real Estate, Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. And as I do with all our government witnesses, I'm going to swear you in before you're seated and get going. You can raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Council of the District of Columbia and the Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. You can be seated. It's good to see you. Good morning to you. You begin your testimony whenever you're all settled in.
Good morning, Chairperson McDuffie, members and staff of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. My name is Pam Frenselbeim, and I'm the Director of Real Estate within the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. I'm here to testify in support of PR 26-22, the Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club Disposition Extension Approval Resolution of 2025. The approval of this resolution will provide the mayor 2 additional years to dispose of District of Columbia-owned real property known as the Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club, located at 261 17th Street Southeast and known for taxation purposes as Lot 0802 in Square 1088, the property, as originally authorized under Resolution R 24-707, the Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club Disposition Approval Resolution of 2022, which was approved by council on December 6, 2022. I would like to thank you for holding today's hearing and recognize the invaluable contributions and support of the community, particularly past commissioners of ANC 6B and present commissioners of ANC 7D, residents of Hill East, Councilmember Vincent Gray and his staff, Councilmember Charles Allen and his staff, and the Hill East Civic Association, Capitol House Condominium Association, La Colina Condominiums, Capitol Hill Restoration Society, and the many other neighbors and community members who have been active in making the Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club redevelopment project possible. We look forward to continuing to work with all of these stakeholders, as well as the new Ward 7 Council member, Wendell Felder, and his staff. The adaptive reuse of this former Eastern Branch Boys and Girls Club vacant building will create approximately 35 affordable and workforce housing homeownership opportunities, 11 below-grade parking spaces, and 2,500 square feet of community serving space. Since approval by council of the disposition of the property in 2022 and execution of the land development and disposition agreement with Morningstar Community Development, the developer, on June 8, 2023, the developer submitted a map amendment application to the Zoning Commission Case 23-23, on September 27, 2023. On June 3, 2024, the Zoning Commission held a hearing on the requested map amendment. The map amendment was approved and the order issued on December 27, 2024. In addition to the map amendment, the developer filed a special exception application on September 28, 2024, with the Board of Zoning Adjustment, the BZA, for zoning relief from FAR maximums and alley setback requirements, with a BZA hearing subsequently scheduled for March 19, 2025. To date, the developer has worked diligently to meet all deadlines set forth in the schedule of performance included in the land development and disposition agreement. However, the developer has not yet been able to complete the milestones in the design and pre-construction phase that were included in the schedule of performance because the approved development plan relies on approval of the zoning map amendment and additional zoning relief. Given the length of time that it has taken to get through the entitlement process, we are requesting a 2-year extension so the developer may complete the entitlement process, secure financing, and start construction. Approval of the extension will ensure a vacant building is redeveloped and placed back into productive use, providing affordable homeownership opportunities and 2,500 square feet of community serving space. Thank you for your time and consideration of the legislation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. I do have some questions for you. I am going to start with asking sort of generally, has there been any substantive changes to the terms of the agreement that was sent down that was originally approved by the district? Anything changes to the term sheet or MOU or anything else associated with the LDDA?
No substantive changes.
Okay. I asked the developer about the matter pending before BZA. You also touched on it in your testimony. Again, nobody has a crystal ball. Given the time, what's the date that's relevant for the BZA?
I believe it's March 19th, 2025 is the hearing date.
Okay, and how does that fit into the council's timeline? Let's just assume, for the sake of this discussion, that the council approves this resolution, it's extended. Is that date still relevant, or they're asking to push that back?
That date should still be relevant.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, and how do you expect it'll impact sort of the time frame for beginning construction, or, I mean, identifying financing? I mean, it's a really tough market right now. If you could actually talk about that a little bit. This is a for sale project. This is a fee simple disposition,
Yes.
which I know this mayor has gotten away from, and I've urged that we get away from fee simple dispositions, but we're talking about 35 condos, which, I know there are a lot of folks in the District of Columbia who would love to own their own home, and I know there are folks who would love to come to the District of Columbia and own their own home. So there's clearly, I think, some level of demand. What's the market like? What's the demand like for uh, condos in 2026, 2025, as compared to when this originally came to the council for disposition?
Yes, well, as you mentioned, I think there are a lot of people who are seeking homeownership opportunities. I think we are also focused on providing more homeownership opportunities as an opportunity for wealth building, wealth creation, and investing in neighborhoods. Right now, condos, I believe the demand will continue to be strong. There has been a shift away from condo development, I think, by the market rate developers, just because of the regulatory environment for condominiums. And multifamily rental was doing well. So I think the shift had gone to multifamily rental. This particular condominium, because it's small, it helps because the absorption of those units can go quicker than if someone were building say, a 100-unit condominium building. But financing is difficult, and I think the other market considerations are construction costs. I think, we're in an uncertain environment as it relates to construction cost. And then time, the market, I think there'll be a period of continued volatility in terms of interest rates. They'll be a little bit unpredictable. So that will also influence both the construction lending environment and also the homeowners, purchasing power.
So the extension would extend this to December 2026. Realistically speaking, what we don't want to do is kind of find ourselves back here having DenPit and the developer ask for another extension. I know this community, who has largely been supportive of this project, would like to see it move forward. You have articulated, as has the developer, the challenges that exist in today's market. Are those challenges that you've described around construction costs, lending, identifying financing, interest rates, those are concerns that applicable in the way they would be to a multifamily development as they are to a condominium development? Is there any distinction between the type of development that we're looking at here in terms of the impact or any particular market constraints, or is it just how it is right now in today's market?
I mean, I suspect an investor, a lender will look at the two product types differently and assign a different risk profile to each of them. I don't know exactly what that distinction would be, how the market would perceive that risk.
But DenPit and the mayor's office is still comfortable and confident in this project proceeding within the 2-year extension if granted by the council.
Yes, I think that we need to move as quickly as possible, and this developer has been committed to this project since the beginning. If it takes longer, going back to the starting, going back and finding a new developer to redevelop it will only extend the time period. So I am thankful to this developer for remaining committed to this project and moving things along as quickly as possible, and trust that they will continue to stay committed to get construction started as quickly as possible and sell these units and have a successful outcome for the community.
In terms of cost and financing, the developer asked a question about what kind of financing they were pursuing, and obviously they mentioned pretty much whatever available, right? I mean, they're looking at DHCD. They had explored financing with DC Housing Finance Agency. They're looking at private sector financing. What can you tell us, because DHCD is in the Deputy Mayor's cluster, what can you tell us about the viability in pursuit of that kind of funding with DHCD, HBTF, or other government funding to support a project that has some affordable units associated with it, and importantly, affordable ownership for sale units, which is something that I know there's demand for in the city. A lot of people, a lot of constituents have been asking about it. What's the status of DHCD, HBTF, How are things going in terms of these projects getting that type of financing?
Yeah, it's, that's another, I think, big challenge for projects, particularly those with affordable housing units included in them, just because there are far more projects than there are resources available to fund them. And the gap for projects is fairly significant in a, climate of increasing construction costs. The gap just continues to grow year over year. And right now we're in a period where there are, reduced affordable housing subsidies available. So that pressure is going to continue to slow the delivery of units, particularly affordable units.
Yeah. Just really two quick questions before I turn to my colleague, and I'll only need this one round. Um, I believe the project was originally in Ward 6. There's been a redistricting. It's in Ward 7. Obviously, we have the Ward 7 council member here, and I know Councilmember Allen had been very involved in this project along the way. Is there any change in support? Is there still support in the community for this project and this extension that's being requested?
Yes, there is still support. I mean, through the public process associated with the zoning changes, there's been continued support for the project. I think the community, as you mentioned, is very eager to see this property put back into productive use.
Okay. And then my final question, just for the benefit of the public, can you explain what happens if the council does not approve this extension?
If the council does not approve this extension, then the LDDA lapses, it terminates, and this project would not move forward.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Ward 7 Councilmember Felder for a round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions. Chairman McDuffie alluded to the market not being the same thing that it once was a couple years ago, and we know that yesterday's price is not today's price. So my question is, what is DEMPED doing to ensure that projects such as this do not need extensions moving forward so they can be completed on time?
Yeah, I mean, I think, globally, we're trying to improve economic development conditions in the district so that the district can receive more revenue to fund affordable housing production. And I think that will help speed these projects along as they sit and wait for availability of affordable housing resources that will help get them started.
And my final question, Pam, as you probably are aware, the mayor had this ambitious goal to create 36,000 new units by 2026. Looking at this project, the 35 units that are being proposed, is that included within the 36,000 affordable, 36,000 new units plan, or this is separate to that?
Because this project is not delivered, it would not be within that 36,000
Okay.
unit number, but which I will add was achieved ahead of schedule.
Okay, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. So these are two separate. This will be a new addition of affordable housing if delivered to
That's
the
right.
city. Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes my questions.
Let me just make sure I marked up your testimony and I did not make sure I asked all my questions actually. Do you know, is there, does this developer have anything pending with any government agency in terms of requests for financing for this particular project?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. All right. I don't have any additional questions. I appreciate your testimony. If anything changes significantly, substantially between now and when we mark this up, we'd love for you to, I think the law requires you to actually let us know. So we will look out for that. But it sounds like there's a lot of support for the extension. Hopefully some marketing conditions change and this project can move forward. I appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you.
We're now going to turn to the second and final measure on our agenda today, PR 26-34, the National Links Trust, Inc. Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2025. The proposed resolution was introduced on January 10th, 2025 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on January 21st of this year. This proposed resolution, if approved, would authorize the issuance, sale, and delivery of tax-exempt revenue bonds, notes, or other obligations in aggregate principal amount not to exceed $80 million. These bonds will be used for the financing, refinancing, or reimbursing of costs incurred by the National Links Trust, Inc. for projects located at Langston Golf Course, East Potomac Golf Course, and the Rock Creek Park Golf Course located in wards 4, 5, and 6. The requested revenue bonds will be used to facilitate the completion of the nation's capital project, a multi-phase project that will include the construction of new clubhouses, driving ranges, new putting courses, and multi-use trails for jogging, walking, and hiking. Improvements to, I'm going to call up, how many witnesses we have for this? I'm going to call up our first panel of public witnesses. And again, just remind witnesses who are testifying virtually to remember to mute yourselves until we call your name. Damian Cosby, our first witness. We have Will Smith, who signed with the testifying person. Michael McCartan is also present. How about Carol Spring? Ask you all to share your space a little bit too. We got to slide folks in. I'm not going to pick you up on camera if you slide that way. Once you slide, actually, just slide that way if we could, yeah. Thank you all, appreciate it. Good morning. It's great to have you all here. We will begin with Damian Cosby.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee and staff. My name is Damian Cosby. I am the Executive Director for the National Links Trust. We are the nonprofit organization leading the rehabilitation of Rock Creek Park Golf. As part of a 50-year lease with the National Park Service, we've been tasked with the operation and long-term management of the city's 3 historic public golf courses, including Rock Creek. Since 2019, we've been committed to positively impacting Washington, D.C.'s community through golf, creating workforce development programs that provide life-changing opportunities to underprivileged teens in Northwest D.C., providing free golf lessons to community members so even more people can experience the mental and physical benefits of the game of golf, and working alongside community partners like the Anacostia Watershed Society on environmental projects at all 3 facilities. Prior to signing the lease with the National Park Service in 2020, all 3 facilities, but especially Rock Creek, have suffered from decades of deferred maintenance and decay. Starting with our project at Rock Creek, we'll change that. We will be able to significantly increase the positive impact to the community through experiences at our facilities for both golfers and non-golfers alike, while maintaining affordability, accessibility for all. From a sustainability standpoint, we'll use renewable energy, establish more than 11 acres of critical meadow habitat, and plant more than 1,500 trees, resulting in a long-term net gain in tree canopy. The result of this comprehensive community-driven vision is a plan that is supported overwhelmingly by our community. Last fall, when the project was nearly unanimously approved by the National Capital Planning Commission, supportive testimony outnumbered detractors by 20%. And that figure does not include the over 5,600 signatures in support of the project from those both in DC and the surrounding region. Being able to participate in the IRB program will mean that NLT has more resources available to us to manage a healthy forest at Rock Creek and allow us to move on to the rehabilitation of the historic Langston Golf Course. And all this is a popular project with long-term sustainability and true community impact as driving forces. And we are eager to continue moving forward. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your testimony. I don't believe we have your written testimony. We'd love to make that a part of a record. I'm going to turn.
Yeah, we can submit that.
All right, next is Will Smith. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to testify here today. My name is Will Smith. I'm a co-founder of National Links Trust, and I just want to follow on a couple things of what Damian said. First off, I want to reemphasize that we are a nonprofit. Every single dollar that is spent at these golf courses or any profit that we make is reinvested in these facilities. And that's done in 3 ways. First, probably and most important, is employment to DC residents and those from our surrounding communities. Secondly, It is through community impact programming like our Jack Vardaman Workforce Development Program. And third is by putting together a savings fund for these capital improvements that are so desperately needed at all three facilities. This IRB opportunity, as Damon alluded to, would allow us to invest more into the long-term healthy forest at Rock Creek, more into making sure that these facilities are managed in a way that they deserve and the community deserves. And lastly, it will allow us to be able to move on to help other facilities in DC like Langston. And so I hope the committee gives it serious consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Michael McCartan. Good morning to you. Begin your testimony. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman McDuffie. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I just gonna try and touch on a few things that Will and Damien were building on and expand on it a little bit. When we decided to form National Links Trust, as residents of DC, Will and I and people who had a background in the golf world, what we saw was, and I mean, just kind of stepping back, I learned to play golf at East Potomac as a kid, and my interest in golf was kind of launched from the exposure to the game there. And the story that I have as a golfer is matched by so many people in the DC area whose exposure to golf similarly comes from affordable and accessible golf courses located in, close-in locations like the 3 DC golf courses provide. So we formed NLT as a nonprofit because we want to preserve the communities that play the courses today, and put in the investments that have not been made in the courses so that they can be thriving into the future. The lease that we signed with the National Park Service, all of the courses are owned by the National Park Service. Ultimately, we have a 50-year lease. The lease is there as a mechanism to address the deferred maintenance, address the investments that were not made in the courses over time, and that those investments kind of take, they are applied to a variety of things. Like if you're going to, what's visible of the deferred maintenance at the courses, whether it's a clubhouse that doesn't have the, doesn't have accessibility, it doesn't have a food and beverage program, it doesn't serve as an asset to the community that it could be. The golf course where it doesn't have an irrigation system and it doesn't have many of the things that a sustainable golf course could, or whether it's the surrounding vegetation, which was overgrown with immense amounts of vines and invasive vines and shrubs and invasive trees. That's what we were tasked to address. That's the deferred maintenance. And so it's what we're doing through the course of this project, is trying to make those things right and trying to make the property something that's going to be a positive contributor to the community and the environment over the next 50 years of our lease and beyond. So thank you for your consideration.
And thank you for your testimony this morning. We appreciate it. Our fourth witness on this panel is Carol Spring. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us in person. You can begin your testimony. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Councilmember McDuffie and staff. My name is Carol Spring. I'm a Ward 4 resident, and I raised my daughter here. My family and I have gone on countless hikes in the jewel of the city, Rock Creek Park. This park is for everyone, not just for a few who can afford to play golf. The City Council has a responsibility to its residents to lift up public spaces for all. National Links Trust likes to brag that they're going to offer a few select scholarships to underprivileged youth to learn to play golf. But for all the other golfers, the cost of golf is going to go up. Most of the golfers I've chatted with at the Rock Creek Golf Course have commented that they do not like the plan to expand the golf course. There was a lack of transparency and lack of discussion with the community in creating this plan. Most local residents are deeply opposed to the plan as well. Who then is it for? Is it for the big donors, including Troon, the largest golf course management company in the world, who is salivating at the chance to make private profit off public land? Is it for individual donors to whom National Links Trust is offering a pay-to-play game? Their donations will give them various perks, including priority on reserving tee times. Why, I ask you, Mr. McDuffie, should the city take financial risk to issue bonds so that private entities can profit off public lands? I'm concerned about environmental justice in the district, and NLT's plans for both Rock Creek and Langston negatively impact environmental justice, especially for Ward 4 and Ward 5 neighbors. Latricia Adams, the president of Young, Gifted, and Green, and appointed by Biden to the White House Environmental Justice Committee, has written extensively about these impacts, and I'd like to briefly cite her research. The mature trees that the National Park Service and NLT have been so quick to begin chopping down will take a long time to replace, to become mature trees again. Tree removal exacerbates air pollution and therefore contributes to the increase in respiratory illness, especially among children and elders. Use of pesticides on golf courses contaminates the soil and water. NPS and NLT's plans undermine the city's critical efforts to mitigate the growing impacts of climate change for our most vulnerable residents. If you vote to offer bonds to NLT, you are responsible for advancing environmental injustice across the city. So I ask you, Mr. McDuffie, what do you want your legacy to be? To approve business as usual or to advance economic justice? Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. I'm not sure we have any written testimony from any of the four witnesses, and so we would encourage you all to provide that written testimony so that we can add it to the record. And I would just make the same call for witnesses who are testifying virtually or other in-person witnesses who haven't testified yet. Just if you could, we would encourage that. Let me I think it would be useful to start this round of questions off getting a better understanding perhaps from Damien Cosby, the proposed changes to the Rock Creek facility. I want to acknowledge that there's actually 3 facilities that will be impacted by this measure, but a lot of testimony that we anticipate receiving and have already received has been around one of the 3, which is Rock Creek Golf Course. Talk, if you could, about actually talk about the changes for East Potomac and Langston, but then also, if you could finish that up, laying, I think, some context for what exists today at Rock Creek and what the changes would include there.
Of course, and I will, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I will start with Rock Creek since that is the first project we are looking at. Currently, Rock Creek is, as I mentioned in my testimony, is an underperforming facility. Our detractors like to mention that they have spoken to golfers and golfers are not in support of our plans there. But I would say that the golfers are speaking. There are golfers that live on 16th Street that drive right past Rock Creek every day to drive 45 minutes, a half an hour to 45 minutes to East Potomac or Langston to use those facilities because Rock Creek is lacking in those facilities. So our plan is to honor the original design of Rock Creek. And, originally it was 18 holes and due to some construction got condensed down to 14 holes, which is currently how we're operating the facility right now. Our plan is to build a really, really robust, fun, engaging 9-hole golf course designed by arguably one of the best golf course architects in the country, Gil Hance, who's lending us his services pro bono. He believes in our mission and what we're trying to accomplish. So we're going to have a really fun, engaging 9-hole golf course. We also have a short course, a short course that is going to be, again, fun and engaging, really kind of breaking down those barriers to entry for people that don't have a lot of time to play golf or may not have the clubs or may not have all the know-how to get on a golf course. A short course is a really...
Let me stop you What is a short course?
It's just, actually, maybe I'll turn it over to Mike and give you a little better explanation of it. It's just a shorter version, just less ground to maintain. But I'll let Mike maybe expand on.
Yeah, so a short course is made up of par 3 holes, so they're a lot shorter than other types of holes in golf. So the main 9-hole course will have par 3s, par 4s, and par 5s. Takes up more space on the site, but it does go back to the original design that's out there. We can't get back that original design in full because of the construction of Military Road. So what we're doing is we're allocating some of the rest of the space to par 3 course, which takes up less space, requires less maintenance, less tree work in order to get the light and airflow needed to maintain grass for golf. And then we're converting another part of the existing golf course to the driving range. And then the last is we're taking 2 of the original holes and we're turning it into pollinator meadows. So that's
You turn them into,
pollinator meadow.
Okay.
And that pollinator meadow is, as Damian mentioned, that's where the public trail will go through the golf course out to the meadow and back to the clubhouse.
okay. And is there a driving range there currently?
I was just going to say, in addition to what Mike was speaking to, we are going to add a driving range to the property. Currently, there isn't a driving range. Will correct me if I'm wrong. Is it 25-minute? 20 Falls Road. It's about 25 minutes away. Is the closest driving range to Rock Creek. So we're going to add a 2-tier driving range. Our friends and partners at the First Tee at Greater Washington, D.C.'s headquarters will be out of Rock Creek. It's the first time they actually have a physical space they will be working out of. So we're happy to support them and work with them as this project progresses. We'll also have a full-service restaurant, which is something we think the community is in dire need there. We also, in addition to the full-service restaurant, will have a large free practice putting green that anybody can come and enjoy. We'll have outdoor seating, and it's going to be a really unique setting for people to be able to come to be able to play golf, participate with the large putting green or the driving range in this park setting within the city. So we're really excited about what the future looks like.
The reason I wanted you to talk about Rock Creek last, because I figured you might not talk about the other 2. I want you to talk about the other 2 as well. So if you could talk about the other.
Very good. Yes. So our second project is at Historic Langston. I think we all understand, or we should understand, what Langston means to not only DC, but Black golfing in the United States. It is a historic site. It is a real true treasure and something I'm personally connected to all 3 projects, but especially Langston because of what Langston means. So our plans there are very similar to Rock Creek. We're going to hopefully phase it and restore the driving range. And Mike, please chime in if I miss anything here. Restore the driving range, renovate all 18 holes of the golf course. We hope to add a 6-hole kids course on the site, renovate the historic clubhouse there, creating additional space for our Jack Vardaman workforce development programs and junior caddy programs. Our Jack Vardaman workforce development program is something I'm personally very, very proud of, and what we've been able to accomplish in the lives we've been able to change through that program. And it's interesting to say that to hear somebody say we like to tout, we give a few scholarships. A few is better than none. And if we can help one person, we've accomplished our jobs. But we intend to help more than one person, more than one young kid in the city. And as we renovate these properties, we will be able to impact more and more families. So anything I missed at Langston?
We are part of the Langston project is to invest in the connection of the golf course to Kingman Lake and the Anacostia River. We are currently working with the Park Service and DOEE about creating wetlands along the golf course to serve as an addition and something that combines with the work that DOEE is doing in Kingman Lake and the river. That's kind of currently in its design phase for the city. And then we're also going to daylight a stream that's part of the site that was covered over when the site was originally turned into a city dump back in the early 1900s. And so the environmental restoration of Langston as a site, in addition to as a golf course, is a key part of the plan there.
And East Potomac.
I want to speak to this. We're so far.
Yes.
I'll let you speak.
There's a lot. So at East Potomac, there are, it does follow the same plan. There's the driving range already. One of the models that we're using for the other courses is the way that East Potomac kind of works. There's a driving range, there's a short course, the par 3 course, and then there's kind of a medium length course and the big course. So it provides this journey from learning the game at the driving range to moving to a par 3 course to moving to the big course that has been really successful, really popular, and it takes people from not knowing anything about golf to being, able to play all in an affordable setting. And that's the key of what we're trying to do across all of the courses, is maintain that affordability, but make the investments that allow people to be exposed to golf and then work their way into the game.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Mike, I cut you off. Probably wasn't clear, but that is the vision for Rock Creek, where you can come to the free putting green, not know anything about the game, and never potentially had interest in the game, but be able to use that putting green, and then maybe migrate to the driving range, and then migrate to the short course, and then migrate to the larger course.
Right. And then I think maybe East Potomac's the easiest place to talk about this, but each of the properties is on the National Register of Historic Places. And the Park Service, as the owners and stewards of the properties, they spent years putting together blueprints for what they wanted to see happen at these courses, because they recognized the deferred maintenance. So there's something called cultural CLR, Cultural Landscape Report, which they did specifically for each course, that goes into the histories of the courses, but more importantly, lays out a series of recommendations saying this is what we want to see happening with investments going forward. So our plans are basically following those recommendations at each of the courses. So at East Potomac, that those recommendations are to, from a historic standpoint, to preserve and potentially bring back the original design of one of the golf courses there. But mainly from like a public standpoint, I think the important stuff is that we would maintain that setup of driving range, short course, medium course, big course. And we'd be investing in bringing back and maintaining the historic assets that are on the site.
I want to ask questions around the environment. I know we got a lot of testimony in and would have heard from a number of constituents about the environmental impact of this project on Rock Creek Golf Course. And I want to ask about accessibility. I'm going to begin with accessibility, and then we'll turn to the environment. I'm always deeply concerned about accessibility and what it means for a resident of Ward 4 who lives nearby, or a resident of Ward 3 who lives across the park, utilizing this public asset, or a resident of Ward 8 who would like to participate, or Ward 5 who'd like to participate. And as someone who grew up playing sports, I always sort of tell the story about my experience playing football, basketball, and baseball in Northeast DC, and the different experience my cousin had, who was only a few months younger than I, but grew up along 16th Street, who grew up playing soccer, getting experience with other sports that I didn't have experience with. What does accessibility mean to you all as you think about these projects? And how will these courses be more accessible across the beautiful diversity that exists in the District of Columbia, of people who live here and people who come to visit? What does accessibility look like to you all? How have you envisioned making it more accessible than it has been in the past?
A great question. For me personally, being a Black man in the PGA of America, which there are not very many of us, and in the history of golf itself, it is very, very important. And one of the reasons why throughout my career, I've stayed in the municipal space, because that is the area we can change the accessibility to golf. Part of our mandate and what we personally believe, the organization personally believes, is that golf is a game for everybody. We want everybody to enjoy these facilities. Whether you play golf or not, we want everybody to enjoy these facilities, but we are intentional about reaching out to all areas of the community. We want everybody to participate in the game That's how we continue to grow the game. It's how we continue to expand the game. We want everybody to have access, and we understand price is an important factor in that. And we are committed to maintaining, when we talk about affordability and accessibility, that doesn't only mean programming, it means pricing as well. We are well below current rates for golf, and we intend to maintain that. We want to make sure that the person that works, has an hourly wage, has access to golf courses. Now, does that mean every day, every time? No, but there are times that we will make sure we maintain affordability and accessibility. We will continue to run programming like Youth on Course that offers young people golf at as low as $5. We'll continue to do our free lesson Friday events where we're teaching people in the community the game of golf free of charge. All of those things will continue and expand upon as these renovation projects move forward.
Yeah, and just to add real quick, accessibility comes in several different forms. I mean, obviously we have programs designed to bring people who normally, wouldn't have access to the golf courses. But one of the things that these courses have that others don't is just the ability, so many people living nearby that can actually get there. This is very unlike most golf courses, so it's an opportunity. We see, at Rock Creek, one of the elements of the project is we're building a accessible path from 16th Street up to the golf course, because right now there's no way to walk to the course at all. It's just one, small thing, but it's being able to get there is a big deal. And Langston actually is blessed with excellent public transportation, with both the metro and the streetcar and bus lines all kind of coming close to there. So we have this opportunity to be able to bring people to the sites. And the next key is making sure people understand that they're open to everyone. Lots of people have told us that, well, A, they didn't know there was a golf course in Rock Creek, and B, that Langston, because it has a fence around the outside, they weren't sure whether it was actually open to the public or whether it was something else. And so part of our job is to make sure that we're making sure people understand these are open places that are, we're trying to have as many people visit and be exposed to golf as
So
possible.
I want to explore a little bit with you all the affordability component of accessibility, and just to put it out there, of the three, Rock Creek is the only one I've never visited, and I've been here my entire life. My 50th year on this earth, I've never been to Rock Creek Golf Course. I imagine at some point navigating the park, having gone to school at Jackson Reed, that I've driven past it, but never visited it. As I think about sport and the importance of it to young folks across the District of Columbia, students in our DC public schools and our DC public charter schools, I think about their ability to play some would refer to as more traditional sports.
Yeah.
The ones I grew up playing, football, basketball, baseball. I think soccer is more prevalent across the city now, but when you think about cost associated with access to sports, I think golf is right up there with probably one of the most expensive sports to play. I think, I think about how many schools in our public school system, public charter school system, actually offer golf to its students, opportunities for things like crew. Might be one public school that has crew. It happens to be my alma mater. That is as far northwest as you can get, save for MacArthur High School. I think about lacrosse. I think about soccer. I don't know how many kids attending school in Ward 7, in Ward 8, and Ward 5 are playing golf regularly. And I imagine the cost has something to do with it, and exposure at an early age has something to do with it. How, if at all, do these projects, this bond resolution, impact the ability and accessibility and affordability for young folks and perhaps their parents to be able to access those courses?
Yeah, again, I think how we've we've kind of structured what the facility will look like will certainly help that, you know, being able, having some free elements and free programming. But you make a great point, you know, anything's possible when given the opportunity. So, you know, one of our internal goals is to you know, get out in the community and let people know that these facilities are here for them, they are accessible to them. And, you know, we have partners that work with us that give us equipment that people can use free of charge. You know, we talked about the high schools and you know, how many high schools actually have young kids that are playing golf. You know, one of the things I would love to establish is a really robust public high school championship. And with that championship being held at East Potomac every year. And really the challenges behind that are, do these young people know that they can play golf? Do they have access to golf courses? And do they have the equipment to use at the golf course? We can take care of two of those things. You know, we have the access for the kids in DC to be able to play. We can work with our partners around getting them equipment to use. So I couldn't agree with you more that is very, very important, and access to, as you mentioned, not only young people, but anybody across the city. We want to get them out on our properties.
And just to add to that, I mean, Damon alluded to our Free Lesson Friday, which gets people from the community introduced to instruction about how to play. We need to, as we go forward as an organization, we have to do more things like that, be more intentional about doing outreach to underserved communities, to let them know about this game, let them know about these places, and get them through the doors so that they play. Rock Creek is a really interesting example. Immediately adjacent to Rock Creek are a number of apartment buildings that at best, you know, it's definitely described as an underserved community. It is surrounded by some more affluence on the outside of it. So it's almost like a perfect scenario. If we can be intentional going into those apartment buildings and introducing the game and welcoming, inviting those communities to our golf course, it can really change who has access to that game, but we need to be able to do that. And things like this industrial revenue bond allows us to have the more resources to go in and be intentional about all of these things that we need to do to make sure accessibility is first and foremost.
So let's pivot to the conversation about the environmental impact, including tree removal. Some of that work has already begun. Talk about where things are there.
Yes, so we're doing a first phase of tree and invasive vine and shrub removal. Most of that work is focused on like a first phase of going through and removing vines and shrubs that are kind of on the edges of the whole corridors. And then that allows us to do a first phase of tree work that is mostly focused on invasive trees and trees that are dead or dying or hazardous. So we're doing that work this winter so that we can then see what the effects are. Because one of the main reasons we're doing this work in the first place is because the golf course has really suffered from a playability standpoint and from the ability to grow grass standpoint. There's just not enough light and airflow.
Let's back up a minute too, because you can't remove trees on your own without permission. So,
Right.
so
Oh,
if you
yeah.
could, for folks who don't quite understand the process, if you could describe the process in which you've engaged to get the authorization to do the work that you all are doing. What agencies, entities have had to be engaged or provide approvals, and when did you all get those approvals?
Sure. So, I mean, the first element of that is that our lease is with the National Park Service. So, starting 4 years ago when we got the lease, we started, kind of evaluating the three golf courses at that point with a focus on Rock Creek because we knew it was going to be the first of the three projects. So, for a period of 2 years, we worked with the Park Service to identify kind of what the goals of the project were and work within that that document, the CLR, the Cultural Landscape Report, which had guidelines about, all right, well, with respect to the historic landscape here, with respect to agronomy, these are the things that generally need to happen. So then the next step was, well, what is exactly the scope of the work that we want to propose? And that process went through the NEPA process with the federal government. as well as Section 106, which is your historic preservation side of things. So that's like the DC State Historic Preservation Office. And then the National Capital Planning Commission, the Commission of Fine Arts, and other agencies that have review approval status for projects on public lands like this that are owned by the Park Service in the city. So, I mean, it's been an extremely extensive and involved process going, through a vegetation management plan for the course. And that goes from, all the way down to tree by tree, doing a tree survey of the property, understanding what we're kind of dealing with as a starting point, picking all of the trees individually that would be affected by the project, all of that going through the NEPA process and getting approval from the agencies, and through today where we have those approvals, which, do you have the date for the NEPA process?
You can get back to the committee if you
Well, yeah,
could
anyway,
on the
so
exact
last
dates.
year was when most of the approvals
Right.
happened.
Are there any approvals associated with the work construction that you all are doing there that you are seeking and have not yet secured? That you're aware of?
No, the one thing that we have to do right now is we're working with DOE on just like your normal construction, stormwater type stuff.
Okay.
But otherwise, the approvals for the tree work, that's already done.
Okay. And was there, what was that process? Was there any public process, any comment process, any opportunity for the public to weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely. There's in all of those processes, whether it's NEPA or the agency approvals, there's multiple opportunities for public engagement. And so we had a number of public meetings or agency meetings where there was a lot of debate about the project and the impacts and understanding of kind of how to think about that in the context of the goals of the project.
Anything you want to put on the record that might touch on specific things that National Links is doing to offset the environmental impacts of Rock Creek or any other sites?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I think one of the fundamental things we're doing is the starting point for this is those CLRs, the Cultural Landscape Report, which says, here's what the Park Service would like to accomplish with these projects. That was fundamentally going to have an impact from the start. In order to have a golf course that functioned was going to have impacts, whether those are impacts to the historic landscape or impacts to the environmental landscape of the course. We recognize that right from the beginning. One of the tenets of our project here is that we're actually shrinking the footprint of the golf course. We're not trying to restore the entire thing because the impacts of doing that were going to be even more than what we eventually proposed. And at the same time, we have no interest in having a negative impact on the environment, other than we also need to have a functioning golf course. So we're trying to do the absolute least we can in order to end up at that outcome. At the same time, we are completely, with that as one of the main goals that we have to accomplish, we also want to make sure that the property ends up better from an environmental standpoint at the end of our lease than it was when we started. We took over something that's overwhelmingly overcome by invasive plants, and the edge nothing about the golf course environment was healthy, even though we are having tree impacts. When we're done with that and we plant 3 trees for every healthy tree that come out, we're going to have more tree canopy in the end. We're going to have something like 10 or 13 acres of meadow habitat that's not out there right now. And the overall picture of the landscape at the golf course at the end of this work is going to be a net positive relative to when we took over. And then just last bits, like, we're very committed to sustainability, and other elements of the project too. We're building a geothermal heating and cooling system at the course. We're putting solar on the clubhouse and driving range, and we're switching to kind of all electric appliances and all things that have a real cost in the short term, but we believe is the right thing to do for the long term. And that's part of the reason why the IRB, is important to us.
Who are you all using as borrowers counsel on this project, on the bond?
Will Liggins.
No, Will Liggins actually is an employee of the District of Columbia Department of Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, but they're lawyers who are generally on the side of the borrower and on the government bond counsel. You know who you're using as borrowers counsel?
We apologize. The person on our team who's handling it is out on paternity leave, so we don't have it handy, but apologies.
Okay, all right, I'll ask, usually Will Liggins or his team, whoever testifies for behalf of the government will know who is borrowers counsel on this project, so I'll make sure I ask them that. My follow-up is that borrowers counsel a certified business enterprise? I think sometimes in thinking about ways to expand opportunities, we think about reducing fees for people to use the golf course, et cetera. But I would urge you all to think about expanding opportunities for minorities, women, and others across the economic pipeline of this project. That includes who your borrowers counsel is. There are certified businesses, minority, women-owned businesses who can do that legal work and do other things that are associated with this project. And I would encourage you all to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we're committed to. The architect who's been going through this planning process with us is a CBE.
Okay.
And I think, I'm not sure, our council may be pro bono, I'm not sure, but yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. I want to turn, before I let you all go, I want to turn to, and I'm happy to excuse you all, but I do want to give Carol Spring the opportunity. You heard a lot. I know it was a lot of questions that I was asking of the folks associated with National Links Trust, but I asked in particular about accessibility around the project, all three sites, particularly Rock Creek, and any efforts they've made to mitigate the environmental impacts. I think you heard the responses. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to mention in response to what you heard from them.
Yeah, about 800 trees have been chopped down already. And there's not been good communication with neighbors about what's happening. I don't think there's accountability with neighbors. And we've been told that we can't walk on the golf course. So
Can I ask you a question? How are you receiving information from National Links Trust? What does the communication look like now?
they have an email list.
Okay,
It's a general email list.
got it. And then I think it was Michael Carton who mentioned that they're planting 3 trees for everyone that's removed. Did I hear that correctly?
3 trees for everyone, healthy native tree.
Got it. All right. And I'm not suggesting that supplants the impact of those mature trees that are being removed, but I did want to make sure the record reflected that. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that. I really appreciate you coming down in person to provide your testimony and being
Thank you.
engaged on this issue.
Thank you.
And-
Yeah, and I didn't hear them discuss pesticide use, how many gallons of pesticides will be used that will go into the Chesapeake Bay watershed.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you each for your testimony this morning. Justine Zegna, Emily DeHare, Joseph Baker, Allegra Cangalosi. What's your name, ma'am? Emily. Emily. And your name? Got it. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I'll try not to put. Vanessa Bertelli? Sure. Your name? Okay. All right, so that means that Justin is not here. I think that's all the in-person witnesses that we had sign up. for today's hearing. The rest of the witnesses, I believe, will be testifying virtually. So again, thank you all for joining us in person. I really appreciate your patience. I know there's a longer panel ahead of us, so we will start from my right and your left. Good morning. Begin your testimony. Hit that button at the base of it. You'll see a red light come on. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Chair McDuffie and distinguished members of the Business and Economic Development Committee. My name is Emily Daher, and I'm a resident of Washington, D.C. I urge you to oppose Resolution 2634, a proposal that would authorize tax-exempt bonds to finance the expansion of golf courses, ones that threaten to destroy our cherished public park. This proposal is not only a misuse of public funds, but also a grave disservice to the values and needs of our community. Rock Creek Park is what first drew me to the city and to my neighborhood. I regularly go trail running and spend my weekends riding my bike along Beach Drive. First, the use of tax-exempt bonds essentially shifts the burden of payment onto the taxpayers and is a decision that should not be taken lightly. These bonds are meant to finance projects that will benefit the entire community, projects that have a clear and equitable return on investment. A golf course, which caters to a select few, is hardly the kind of public benefit that justifies such a significant financial commitment. While the golf course expansions might bring some economic return, that return is far less than the ecological, social, and recreational benefits provided by the parks as it stands. Using tax-exempt bonds for such a project means that we are borrowing from the future to fund something that disproportionately benefits a small group of people, leaving the rest of us to suffer the consequences. Second, this proposal threatens the integrity of an irreplaceable natural resource. Our park is not just a green space, it is a sanctuary for local wildlife, a place where families, children, seniors, and individuals of all walks of life can enjoy the beauty of nature, engage in outdoor activities, and find a moment of peace in our bustling urban landscape. To use public funds to expand the golf course is to rob our community of a valuable public space that supports the health, well-being, and connection of its residents. Finally, I urge you to listen to the voices of our community. There is a growing movement against this project, as many of us feel that the values of inclusivity, environmental responsibility, and public access to green spaces should guide the decisions we make about the future of our city. We must stand firm in our commitment to preserving spaces that are accessible to all, not just a privileged few. I ask you to reconsider this proposal. It is not a decision that reflects the values of a fair, responsible, and sustainable community. We must prioritize the well-being of the many over the interests of the few. Let us invest in projects that enhance our shared spaces, protect our environment, and ensure that future generations have the same opportunities to enjoy the natural beauty that has long defined our city. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next.
Good morning. I'm Allegra Cangellosi. I appreciate the opportunity to testify here today. I am an environmental professional and I've specialized in resource economics in my career. I'm now retired. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm opposed to the district granting the use of $80 million in industrial revenue bonds to NLT for the expansion of the Rock Creek Park, Langston, and East Potomac golf courses. Of particular concern to all of us is Rock Creek Park. I appreciate the need to maintain these historic public golf facilities, but this proposal goes much further than upkeep. The NLT Rock Creek Park proposal includes a new clubhouse, a 9-hole regulation course, a 9-hole par 3 course, a driving range, and a new maintenance building, all at a cost of $25 to $35 million. These projects carry high foreseeable financial risk. More often than not, municipal golf courses lose money. The potential risk is even higher in this instance because NLT is a relatively new organization with no track record of successfully executing projects of this scale. If the project is underutilized, the saplings fail, falls into disrepair, it will indirectly create new costs for the district, though no new taxes were collected. Promises are one thing, a demonstrated track record is another. This brings us to the certain environmental hit, especially in Rock Creek Park, of this proposal. It promises to unnecessarily raise more of our dwindling forest resources. Any promise to replace these trees with saplings doesn't help. Newly planted saplings most often die, especially in the absence of an overstory to protect them and from harsh weather conditions like those arising from our ever-rising heat. And even if some of them do survive, it will be decades before they deliver the vital ecological services that the sacrificed mature trees once provided. In the absence of mature trees, there's greater flooding, a greater stormwater burden, and impose new direct costs on DC residents. Finally, we're all aware that the Trump administration is determined to draw down financial and environmental capital of our city at a rate we've never before experienced. Is this, under these circumstances, the best use of this financial power that we have? It's just the wrong time for the DC to set in motion predictable and avoidable climate-related cost impacts on all of its residents through a high-risk venture that will benefit a small selection of them. I urge the council to deny this request and require NLT to produce a far less risky, lower cost, less destructive, and more locally equitable restoration alternative for council consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Next.
Morning, Chairman McDuffie. Thank you for the opportunity to give our comments on behalf of Rock Creek Park. I'm a Ward 1 resident and frequent hiker through Rock Creek Park, and I want to voice my opposition to the use of industrial revenue bonds to develop that golf course, specifically at the Rock Creek site. This plan disregards the public interest and would have serious environmental, economic, and social repercussions. For one, urban forests provide a significant health benefit to residents. Notwithstanding the growing body of literature around the mental and physical health benefits of being in nature, Rock Creek Park provides a serious reprieve from the urban heat island effect, which is only growing worse with climate change. Looking at the district's heat island visualizer tool, which you can see in my written testimony, it's obvious that there's a significant temperature increase already within Rock Creek Park, and further deforesting that area would make the temperature even higher. Higher temperatures are, I think, should be a concern to this committee because things like crime are associated with higher temperatures, and an increase in violent crime is bad for the economy, it's bad for property values, and causes businesses to close earlier. Extreme heat can also lead to a decrease in productivity, especially for construction workers, because on extreme temperature days, there's a loss in economic productivity. As you mentioned, construction costs today are not what they were yesterday. So I believe that's a concern for this committee. Heat-related mortality is another unfortunate reality, which again costs the taxpayer money. For these reasons, I think it's imprudent to further deforest Rock Creek Park. This is an important public service to the community. I'm saying this with a background in mechanical engineering, with a focus on refrigeration. Cooling is expensive and the trees do it for free. Cutting down these trees and replacing them with saplings will not provide the same benefit for many years if they even survive. Further, stormwater runoff is another serious concern. The hydrology of a golf course is not as good as that of a forested canopy. With stormwater potentially running into Rock Creek, we could see damaging floods like we've seen in the June of 2006 flooding, which significantly impacted the Federal Triangle over here and caused significant economic damage. Stormwater retention projects can cost millions of dollars, and it's a huge risk to the community in terms of flash flood damage. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We really appreciate it. Next. Good morning.
Good morning. Chair McDuffie, Committee Director Crawford. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in opposition to granting the use of district industrial revenue bonds to National Links Trust for the expansion of Rock Creek Park, Langstone, and East Potomac golf courses. My name is Vanessa Bertelli. I am Ward 4 resident, the mother of 3 teenagers, a neighbor of the park, and one of the volunteers with the Rock Creek Park Golf Course for All Citizen Coalition. The use of tax-exempt bond financing for the purposes of this project is concerning for 10 reasons. First, industrial bonds are not meant for golf courses. Like in the matter we just heard previous to this, industrial revenue bonds are much needed for essential public infrastructure and economic development, such as affordable housing, hospitals, and transit projects. and golf course improvements do not meet that standard. If NLT believes that renovation plans are financially viable, it should pursue private financing rather than relying on public backed bonds. Second, there's a lack of financial transparency and public accountability, and this makes the project risky. There's severe misstatements made by NLT even in this last panel. They're saying they're putting solar on the driving range. That is no longer the case. They're saying that nothing about the golf course was healthy. Over 167 species of birds were cited there, and over 570 species have been cited on the perimeter, within the perimeter of the golf course, leading to one of the most biodiverse areas in the city. This concern of the lack of financial transparency is not hypothetical. A similar municipal golf course renovation in Philadelphia, also designed by Gil Hands, was originally budgeted 20 million and ultimately ballooned to over 50 million, more than 2.5 times the original price estimate. Given that the same architect is leading Rock Creek Park project, there is a real risk of similar cost overruns, especially without full financial transparency. It is important to note that NLT just testified that Gil Hands donated his design service. What they always fail to mention is that Gil Hands stands to gain 9 million in construction services from this project. 3, the economics of municipal golf courses are shaky and add to the risk. You've heard more about this, and there's more in my testimony. 4, the early signs of privatization and restricted access do not bode well for district residents.
I'd like to give you an opportunity to summarize the rest of your testimony.
Sure. Did I not have 5 minutes as a organization?
No, each witness appearing for the committee has 3 minutes
Oh,
to
okay.
provide testimony.
I will do my best to summarize. Yeah, you can see the pictures in my testimony relating to access. There is plenty about oh, yes. So the neighbors that NLT mentioned in their testimony along 16th Street are some of the ones that stand to bear the brunt, the J40 communities that stand to bear the brunt of the increase in urban heat island. They have never been contacted or engaged as part of the engagement for this process. Most importantly, the 50-year lease that this entire project is based upon has been challenged. The legality of it has been challenged. And we have submitted testimony in previous roundtables on NPS about it that I will be happy to add to the record. The picture of the trees that you have in my testimony shows how this is not about removing invasives or trees in poor conditions. These are significant amounts of trees of significant size that are already being removed from our park. Finally, 90% of district residents oppose this plan. 3,212 public comments were submitted to the National Park Service, 90% of which were in opposition. The letter that was submitted as part of the testimony by NLT is laughable because it was signed by people who had no idea about the consequences of this plan. They were asked, do you want a shiny new toy? And they said, yes, I would have done the same. Thank you for this opportunity.
Sure, no, I appreciate your testimony. And I think you all were, at least a couple of you were present earlier when I asked if you all don't mind, I would urge you all to provide your testimony in writing. I really appreciate the thoughtful testimony and the backgrounds of some of you all in providing that testimony. So we'd love to have that be a part of the record. I would ask, this process is occurred over a matter of years, and has involved National Park Service and other federal entities. How do you respond to the concern that there was a process that was followed in order to get to this point, and that there was an opportunity for people to weigh in along the way, and yet the approvals that were sought by the National Links Trust were provided by those various entities along the way? How do you all respond to that?
I would happily address that question.
Sure.
As conveyed in the lawyer letter penned by Andrea Förster, who is a very experienced environmental and historic preservation lawyer who once was president of the DC Bar, explains how in its signing of the 2020 lease, 50-year lease by NPS, NPS essentially committed to the proposed alternative that was put forward and communicated to the public only in 2023. The lease was signed in 2020, only in with this plan essentially baked into it, with no ability for anyone to comment at that time, for the public to weigh in at that time. And then in 2023, the public was presented with only one alternative, which was the exact alternative that NPS had already committed to in 2020.
Was there, I'm really testing my memory, but I remember there was a process to actually call it a competitive procurement process where various entities bid on to be able to have all three of the sites, East Potomac, Rock Creek, and Langston. I do vaguely recollect that process, and that National Links Trust was selected based on some of the things that are before us today in terms of those plans for those various sites. Is that your recollection?
That is correct.
Okay.
Only the appendix in which the details of what was being agreed between National Park Service and NLT were not made public and were only obtained sometime last year. So the public was not aware of what had actually been agreed.
Got it. Okay. I appreciate that. In terms of what's permissible under district law for bonds, do you not agree that this project would fit what is authorized for these types of bond transactions under district law?
This project goes directly against district laws in terms of tree canopy, district laws in terms of preservation of heritage trees, the district's climate commitments, the district's.
I'm talking specifically around the eligible projects, though, because I thought you referenced
Well,
that.
there is a limited amount of industrial revenue bonds.
Yeah.
We have a lot of needs. This should not be prioritized.
I understand that your opinion is that it should not be prioritized, but you don't disagree that it is permissible under the definition of what eligible projects are.
If its financials were sound, but they're not.
But it is in terms of the definition of eligible project. I want to make sure that's not something you're challenging then.
I
don't mean to put you on the spot.
I am
make sure I
aware
understood your
that,
testimony.
you know, the great bulk of these bonds go to schools and hospitals, and so yes, we might find a sports-related project that is so much in the public interest and is so full of sort of increases environmental justice, and this is not it.
Yeah, and then I know you spoke to tree canopy. I know it's a concern to everybody. I know the district has really prioritized meeting its goal of 40% tree canopy by 2032, and has been diligently working with partners. Casey Trees comes to mind as a Ward 5 organization doing a lot of work with the district and with residents. you listened to the testimony you heard from National Links Trust and its efforts. Again, not suggesting that planting one sapling for every, I mean, 3 saplings for every one mature tree that's removed. I don't know if it's heritage tree specifically, but not to suggest that there's some equal measure of trade-off there, but there seems to be an effort to mitigate the environmental impact in the planning of this project. Do you disagree with that? Sure.
If I could just comment that the climate is changing and hydrology in the region is changing. And to raise mature trees on the hope that, as has perhaps been demonstrated historically somewhere else, that 3 saplings will compensate in a certain number of decades. Under these circumstances that we're in now is a big gamble. The safest, smartest, quickest way to address climate pressures on this region is by maintaining mature trees, not wasting them.
I appreciate that. And I know there's been some testimony about the urban heat effect, increasing temperatures, extreme heat effects. I represented Ward 5 for over a decade, and you look at that urban heat effect map online, and you see a significant portion of Ward 5 impacted by climate change. One community that always comes to mind is the community of Ivy City that I know my successor, Zachary Parker, and I have worked together on to try to address some of the challenges there. It was so bad, and is so bad. When I initially took office in 2012, I remember doing a walk in the summer in Ivy City community and literally pulling my chief of staff aside to say, I mean, this has got to be at least 10 degrees hotter than it is in my neighborhood in Northeast that didn't have much of a tree canopy either, but it was noticeable. We partnered with Casey Trees and DDOT and others to plant trees in the community. So it is something that is a priority for me as a council member. It's something that is a priority, I think, for the city, and I think it's articulated in a number of our goals, including, as I mentioned, our goal around increasing our tree canopy. But we have a lot of work to do, and so it is something that we need to consider as we consider development projects that come before this committee, and balancing that against what our needs are. We need more housing, particularly affordable housing for some of our lowest income residents. We need, better quality schools in terms of construction and access to schools for people in walking distance of their communities, good quality schools. We need, I think, more businesses that provide jobs to people who live here. And so all those things come to mind when we think about how to balance our needs in the District of Columbia as a city across what is a really diverse residency, constituency. And I do sincerely appreciate the organization around pushing back on this project. And it's something that we need to take into consideration, myself and the members of this committee. It is not lost on me that you all have taken time to come down here in person to put those words on the record. And I appreciate that. Is there anything else besides what you've already shared that either of you would like to put on the record before we move to our next public witnesses? Sure.
I'd like to just respond with one other thing. They mentioned the plan to irrigate Rock Creek. And I think that sounds like a tremendous strain on the district's water supply, as we've seen last year with the longest drought the region has ever experienced. Using water, which is becoming increasingly precious in large quantities to maintain a non-native grass species on the scale of a golf course, is a tremendous strain on our district's water supply and would further residents of Ward 5 and other less prominent communities in the district would feel those effects first. So we need to think
I
about that as
appreciate you
well.
putting on the record. You mentioned stormwater runoff, I think, earlier in your testimony too. And another thing that I'm keen on and have prioritized, particularly when I was representing Ward 5, and still in this capacity as an at-large member, is some of the challenges that we've had with flooding across the District of Columbia, and how we've tried to incorporate more sustainable practices in our development around housing, parks, capturing stormwater runoff and reusing it. I mean, there are things that I think we're doing a better job of that we have to be mindful as we think about what the future looks like, not just for us, but for our kids' kids, and our kids' kids. So, yes, please.
That is exactly the point. The last point that I wanted to make is this is a 50-year lease. These are our municipal golf courses. I have 3 teenagers. I know you have a couple of those yourself.
I do.
When you go home tonight, ask them. These municipal investment bonds are supposed to be for a long time. They're supposed to be for our children. What do they care about? Do they want an additional par 3, or do they want to save 800 trees? The 800 trees remaining. This is not for us to decide. This is for the next generation to decide. And yet this generation has not been taken into account, has not been consulted, has not been listened to at all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you each for your testimony. No. Next, we have, I'm going to make a call for everybody and appreciate those who've been able to stay on virtually. Paula Edwards, Kim Patterson, Stephanie Sophia Salazar, Rory B., Riley Hutchins, Corey Westbrook, Ashani Kathari, Campbell Howe, Alana Brody, Orem Mehta, Erica Crazy Hawk, Don Baylor, Zach Slavin, Margaret Staines, Sterling Washington. All right. We call the number of people. We're going to begin with Paula Edwards, Commissioner, ANC 4A01. Thanks for joining us virtually, Commissioner. We appreciate your time and your patience. You can begin your testimony.
Hello, I'm Paula Edwards. I am Commissioner of ANC 4A01. I'm a native Washingtonian. I grew up in Shepherd Park near Rock Creek Park, which is the lungs of our city. I have great respect for the environment there. And our ANC is directly affected by the activities of the Rock Creek Park Golf Course. We've been involved directly both for and against the current plans, and we awarded a $3,000 grant to NLT to be used for a goat herd to clear invasive plants. Unfortunately, they were unable to secure the goat herd and had to return the grant, but they later used it to clear invasive plants in an environmentally sound manner. I agree with Mark Twain that golf is the ruination of a good walk. I'm not a golf fan by any means, but I think that the historic exclusion of people of color from this industry, from this culture, and from the sport of golf has worked to our detriment. We have traditionally been excluded from careers in golf, from careers in sometimes business, because as many people know, business deals are made on golf courses. My parents explained to me the effect of the segregation of golf courses and the importance of Langston Golf Course to our community, because that was one of the few golf courses that welcomed everyone. And the maintenance of that, I think, is extremely important to us as Washingtonians. There were multiple opportunities. There was question about public input. On the Rock Creek Golf course at any rate. There were multiple opportunities for public input. I testified 3 or 4 times. They had public hearings at ANC 4A and ANC 4B. They went to public meetings at different community associations, and I've always found them to be open for questions. What I was impressed with was their work in reaching out to their critics. There were several environmental groups that criticized their first plan. They went back to these people and they asked for their input, and they bettered the plan that they had at first. The neglect of the golf course beforehand was responsible for ecological damage also. And it's not as though neglect is something benign that will result in no ecological damage. I think we have to look at the coexistence of ecological systems. I've consulted with experts on bats, on pollinators, on other aspects of ecological sustainability. And I've been very impressed with this plan as far as looking at how to sustain different interests. I think that with the experts they have engaged, this could really be an example for the country of how to maintain these systems together soundly and sustainably. The loss of 800 trees is not something that's desirable, but there are 1 million trees in Rock Creek Park, and I keep making this point. This is less than 1/10 of 1% of the trees in Rock Creek Park. And,
Right.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I will submit the rest of my testimony in writing.
I appreciate that. I was going to ask you to do that. So I appreciate you preempting my need to ask. I'm sure you've testified at a lot of council hearings, so we'd love to have
Of
your
course.
testimony in writing, as we would everybody who comes before the committee. Our next witness testifying virtually is Kim Patterson. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. You can begin your testimony. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see
Okay.
you. So if you want to turn your
That's
video
fine.
on.
Let me try to do that. Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify in opposition to granting the use of $80 million in revenue bonds to the National Link Trust for the destruction of Rock Creek Park Golf Course. I am Kim Patterson. I'm the current Vice President of the Brightwood Community Association, which serves Rock Creek Park area. We're located very close to the park. I live in Brightwood. I'm located very close to Rock Creek Park. I am also the former ANC of 4A05, which abuts Rock Creek Park Golf Course located in Brightwood. Prior to the expiration of my ANC term in January, I actively raised concerns about the National Links Trust renovation of the golf course and its request for $80 million in DC bonds to finance it. I also raised concerns about environmental damage caused by the removal of over 1,100 trees. In 2024, during an open National Park Service public comment period, 82% of the comments from Ward 4 residents and 90% of the comments from DC residents were in opposition to the National Links Trust renovation of the golf course. On June 2024, during my ANC term, ANC 4A adopted a resolution which raised concerns regarding the environmental impact of the renovations at Rock Creek Park. Some of the recommendations adopted in the resolution included request for National Link Trust to reopen the golf course renovation planning process to encourage meaningful public engagement of alternative course layouts aiming to minimize the environmental impacts. It also requested National Links Trust to develop a detailed plan to reduce tree removal, prioritize tree retention, and ensure compliance with tree removal and replacement policies of the DC government comprehensive plan for the National Capital Federal Environment Element. and we requested that this be transparent in their reporting. We also requested National Links Trust to maintain open and transparent communication with the community, addressing concerns in a timely manner and fostering collaboration. Unfortunately, this has not happened. There are 3,800 trees on the Rock Creek Golf Course, 3,800. Not a million. I'm not talking about the entire park. I'm talking about Rock Creek. There are 3,800 trees, and National Link Trust wants to remove 1/3. That is major. Moving on, as a resident of Brightwood, a lot of my neighbors are very concerned about what will happen when these trees are removed. And I have to say, at least 800 have already been removed, and we have the videos to prove it. Removing the tree canopy will make our neighborhood hotter. The clear cutting of these trees, especially our heritage trees that are over 100-year-old, they provide a canopy for us, which will be destroyed. We don't really want to live in a heat island. Also, we are very concerned about the damaging effects to our ecosystem, destroying the habitat of our natural birds and our creatures, especially DC's official bird, which is the wood thrust, which lives off of dead wood, which the Park Service has bulldozed and removed. The national bird, our DC bird, now has no home because they have gutted it. And
Kim Patterson,
yes,
your time has expired.
okay.
You're about a minute over your time. Let me ask, you mentioned that you were, I think you said the president of your civic association?
I'm the
in
vice
Brightwood?
president of the Brightwood Community Association.
Okay. Are you testifying on behalf of the Brightwood Association or
No, I am
personally?
not.
Okay, got it. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you for your testimony.
Mhm.
Rory B., good morning to you. Thanks for your patience remaining online. You can begin your testimony. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, yes, I am Rory B. I am here to testify in opposition to this project. I wish I could have been there in person, but due to other obligations, could not be. I am a resident of Ward 4, and I consider myself to be a member of one of the generations most impacted by this project. And again, go towards this project. DC Code 8-65104 says that it shall be unlawful for any person or entity, including the district government, without a heritage tree removal permit issued by to top, cut down, remove, girdle, break, or destroy any heritage tree. And yet, due to the National Links Trust project, NPS has been breaking local DC law by cutting down over 100 heritage trees in the Rock Creek Park. I have spent hours talking to working class residents in Ward 4, Brightwood, in English and in Spanish, and many cannot come to daytime meetings like the one today due to work obligations. But every single person I have spoken to has been opposed to the Rock Creek Golf Course rehabilitation project, and many have been outraged. I'd estimate that fewer than 10 of the people I spoke to had even heard of the project, despite Park Service's assurances that comprehensive outreach had been completed. The people who live in the neighborhoods most impacted by the Rock Creek Golf Course rehabilitation project have not been properly consulted. This project is so thoroughly rejected among the masses that to ask the community to fund this borders on extortion, in my opinion. Park Services has obfuscated the process of the project. When we visited the park, we were told by employees that no trees had been cut down, but we could visually see trees that had been felled.
Yes, you're up
Then
among
they had said that
5
only
people.
dead trees. Sorry?
Kim Patterson, you're not muted. We apologize, Rory B. We'll mark your time, Daniel, and we'll give her a little extra time. So you can finish your
you.
testimony, Roy B. But let me just remind witnesses who are testifying virtually to mute yourselves when you're not speaking.
Thank you. Park Services said that only sections of trees that had been cut down, and then they said that only invasive trees were being cleared, but then only accidentally. Finally, we saw healthy native trees chopped up. National Park Services had been verbally lying to community members. And they've decimated the area. When I last visited the course, I saw the canopy absolutely devastated. This project is expensive. $80 million should be going to the desperately needed park maintenance in the community that's causing these tree deaths in the first place. I'm deeply concerned that any of the financial gains from the course will not be seen or enjoyed by the city. Profit or not, this project will have drastic impacts on the endangered bats, amphipods, and birds that find refuge in Rock Creek. The night lighting of the proposed driving range will disrupt the circadian rhythms of local species as well. This project caters to gentrification and is a major violation of the principles of environmental justice. No mitigation of the environmental impacts could possibly replace the canopy that is already in place. You all have responsibilities to protect the land on which you govern, and I question what would motivate anyone on the council to support projects so widely opposed by constituents. I am not engaging in hyperbole when I say that the climate is in crisis, and due to projects like this one, my future and the future of my family are on the line. I'm firmly in favor of common sense maintenance in the parks. I hate seeing how many of the overgrown ivy vines have choked so many trees. But funds should be going into these projects, not to this project, but to maintenance projects in general to prevent maintenance neglect. However, after talking to the community, I can confidently speak our opposition to this project and to the National Links Trust contract as a whole. How can we hope to protect 1 million trees if we cannot prevent this 800? We want true rehabilitation and maintenance of our parks, but the current Rock Creek Park Golf Course plan is a matter of land development and destruction of the land, and thoroughly reworked if not completely halted. The forest is not to be bought or sold. This project must be rejected. I stand against it. I stand in opposition to funds going towards it, and I stand in favor of tree. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony, Roy B. Really appreciate you taking the time to testify before the committee. We had just a slight bit of challenge with your connection. I got a message saying that your bandwidth was low. So if you have time, we'd love to have your testimony in writing. We really appreciate it hearing it, but certainly want to make sure we have your full testimony as part of this record. Our next witness is Riley Hutchins. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us virtually. You begin your testimony. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. My name is Riley, and I'm a proud resident of Brightwood, which is the neighborhood directly adjacent to the Rock Creek Golf Course. I'm going to start with some facts and then conclude. There are 3 main reasons that the Industrial Revenue Bond Program, IRB, should not offer a bond to the National Links Trust for the renovation of these 3 golf courses. The first is that NLT does not need the money, in my opinion. The second, the project does not benefit the public. And the third is that this is a risky investment for DC. To point number 1, that National Links Trust does not need the money. They were founded in just 2019, and in 2023 already had over $12.5 million in revenue. One of their biggest donors is Troon, the biggest golf management in the company the biggest golf management company in the world. They manage over 900 golf courses in 35 different countries, and they raised $35 million for charity in 2023 alone. So their biggest funder has a ton of funding for projects like this. At the onset of this golf course project, National Links Trust claimed that the funding would not come from the DC government or taxpayers, and now here they are trying to secure an $80 million tax-exempt bond. This bond will not make or break this project. It will just be a payday for the National Links Trust, and it's therefore better spent on other items that will benefit DC residents. To point number 2, this project does not benefit the public. If it did, then why did 90% of DC residents who submitted comments to the National Park Service oppose it? The proposal here is to take what is already well-used public land and renovate it, destroying its healthy ecosystem, the very thing that makes it beneficial to the public in the process. The National Links Trust spokespeople earlier on this call, on this meeting, only mentioned golfers and potential golfers, omitting the 90% plus of non-golfers in the district who benefit from the Rock Creek Golf Course having a healthy ecosystem, because trees produce healthy air and are the most efficient carbon sinks in existence. When Councilman Duffy, you tried to help Will by asking what National Links Trust is doing to reduce the environmental impact. He stumbled through his answer, talking about how there will always be an impact, and they're shrinking the footprint of the course to lessen the impact. So what I learned from that is that even he agrees that the less they renovate, the better the impact is on the environment. And at its very best, these golf courses only benefit a tiny segment of the population. My third and final point is that this is a risky investment. Public golf courses often end up being a sink on governments, and the architect leading this project, Gil Hands, went 250% over budget on his last golf course renovation in Philly. The National Links Trust does not need the money. It doesn't benefit the public, and it's financially risky. That's why you shouldn't support it. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony, Riley Hutchins. Our next witness is Corey Westbrook. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us virtually. You can begin your testimony. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, good morning. Thank you. I am Corey Westbrook. I live in Ward 1 in Mount Pleasant. I oppose the National Links Trust, Inc. Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2025. As a DC resident and taxpayer, I think the $80 million bond can be better utilized. We don't need any part of the National Link Trust, Inc. project, including renovations to the Langdon Golf Course, East Potomac Golf Course, or the Rock Creek Park Golf Course. We don't need new clubhouses, driving range facilities, or maintenance. These are elitist activities in a national park, and I don't want my tax dollars spent on any part of it. What we do need is more trees. As a DC resident, my main concern is global warming, not access to golf. Trees, especially those in the national park, should protect me and everyone else from climate change. They should not be killed to provide unnecessary fun for a few. We have plenty of golf courses and recreation. We desperately need more nature, wildlife, carbon sinks, and other ecological services that trees provide for free. I don't want a penny of my tax dollars, and DC residents pay some of the highest taxes in America, to go to a clubhouse or a driving range. Golf is elitist and expensive, while extreme heat, flooding, and storms impact middle and low-income people more. Leave the trees to protect us all. Use the $80 billion to slow climate change, not accelerate it. We should use bonds on projects that help all DC residents, not just golfers. I'm sure there are many more worthy projects that will benefit the public health and the environment that could use the $80 million bond that they repay over 25 years. I believe a golf course within Rock Creek is an incompatible use in keeping with the mission of the National Park Service. The mission, as stated in the original authorization legislation, is preserve unimpaired the natural and cultural resources and values of the national park system for the enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. The Rock Creek Golf Course is reserved for the exclusive use of one activity in a large portion of the park, to the exclusion of walkers, wildlife watchers, runners, bikers, bird watchers, and even these people are often chased away. The population of the world, the United States, and the district has increased since the creation of the National Park Service, and Rock Creek and the golf course and our needs have evolved, especially in light of global warming. Urban America has demonstrated a great need for green space, as has been noted by closing roads to provide increased safe pedestrian and bicycle use and other nature uses. It's infuriating to see how harmful this project has gone. It's infuriating to see how far this harmful project has gone, and heartbreaking to see so many trees have already been cut down for someone to play a game. I am thankful for this opportunity to shut down this deal, and please, in closing, I'm just gonna say, please do not use the bond that is funded by taxpayers to continue to support this destructive and elitist project. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony this morning, Corey Westbrook. Our next witness is Alana Brody. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining this committee virtually. Begin your testimony. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting us speak. I want to echo many of the other people here in not support of this piece of project. Many things have been already said and explained, and I don't want to completely just repeat all the talking points, but I do just want to continue to express my concerns for the financial liability of this project. While some of the benefits that the NLT has claimed are very possible, this is just far too risky of a project to accept from public funding in the district. Again, 9 out of 10 people don't want this to happen. I feel that the public comment process in the public communication was not done really in good faith. We were not well educated on what was happening, and it felt very, very late notice to even learn of these projects' existence. But again, like I'm just reiterating, while there may be some benefits to this project, the amount of public funding that would be required is far too high for the potential returns. We're looking at benefiting a very small amount of people when this is a large, large amount of money that likely will increase in expenses. Whereas that could be put towards something else that has a much greater outcome for more people in a more positive sense. And if we're talking about the environmental impacts, I, again, have the same concerns about environmental justice, both for our people and like the species of the area, but to talk to the points made about creating wetlands and working with the Anacostia watershed community in this area, that's great. If we're going to think about the environmental concerns on that way, why are we not rehabilitating the entire golf course to be back to wetlands, back to more trees? The saplings cannot provide the same environmental benefits as the large old growth trees will. The carbon drawdown is critical to preventing the urban heat islands effects. And so much of this project goes against DC goals and laws surrounding climate mitigation. So that's just very confusing to me as a resident, that makes it hard to trust what is happening. And again, if there's overwhelming pushback from district residents, such as myself, in these kinds of projects, but they still continue to push forward, it's hard to feel trust in the process. So while I'm very thankful that I was able to speak today, that's also a privilege. I was able to take some time away from work to do this. That's just not realistic for so many people here. And I strongly urge you to consider the of how this all happened and what we can do to improve it in the future. And that this is just simply not where the district needs to be spending its public funding right now. If they want to pursue this privately, then so be it. But this is not where district funding needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this morning, Alana Brody. Really appreciate it. Our next witness on the list is Margaret Staines. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining the committee virtually. You begin your testimony. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning, esteemed Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie. I am one of those 90% of the people in November 2023. My name is Meg Staines, by the way. I'm one of the 90% of the people in 2023 that voted against this entire project. So I reiterate what the lady said before me. I don't understand how we got here when everybody opposes it. I strongly oppose the use of district bonds by National Links Trust. They have plenty of their own money, and they'll make tons of money doing this. Let them finance it. Why should we help rich people get richer while tens of thousands of our residents are unhoused and tens of thousands of others are struggling to keep their chins above the waterline? Moreover, the proposed project is an attempt to privatize and commercialize a public good by destroying trees that benefit everyone to attract wealthier players, and by giving its donors access to priority booking. National Links Trust embodies the injustice that district is supposed to be fighting against. I have a news flash for everybody. Even if you're a billionaire, you still need oxygen to live. And here in DC, for now, we have a lot of amazing trees. And the trees manufacture that oxygen for us for free. I cherish that. And Councilmember McDuffie, you should too. The removal of over 1,000 trees from our national park is opposed by 9 in 10 district residents. So why did you vote for it? How did we get here? It violates the intent of DC's tree laws. It is an insult to the district and our climate commitments. We, the taxpayers and residents of Washington, D.C., have a very precious resource that many cities our size would envy. A 1,754-acre park right in the middle of the city. There are hiking, walking trails, picnic areas, historic sites, a beautiful creek, bike paths, wildlife, trees, shade, fresh air, cooler temperatures in the summer, and horse stables. These greedy golf people want to destroy this so that they can kiss the rings of the deranged billionaire lunatics attempting to take over the United States of America and the world. Believe me, Representative McDuffie, we will be just fine if these people don't play golf here. They are unlikely to anyway, and in fact, good riddance. I know these fat cats have a way of making you feel like you're important when they want something from you. That is alluring to some and makes you feel like a hotshot. Don't be fooled. They are miserable snake oil salesmen just like the rest. Your allegiance should be to your constituents and not to these robber barons. Snap out of the trance, Representative McDuffie. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. When the trees are gone in their city, they will beg to live here where we still have trees. In defense of our trees, the health of DC residents, beauty, wildlife, our city's precious natural resources, our taxpayer dollars, basic decency, and equity, I submit my testimony to strongly oppose this blatant greed, short-term thinking, and betrayal of public trust. You want to pay some extremely wealthy people $80 million of my money to chop down 1,000 of our trees, and to that I say no.
Thank you for your testimony, Margaret Staines. We really appreciate it. I think that's all the witnesses that we've had who signed up virtually to testify, who actually appeared before the committee to provide their testimony. I want to ask those who testified today to provide their testimony in writing if they haven't already done so. But I would also encourage those witnesses who signed up to testify, who were not able to get online to testify for whatever reason that might be, to take the opportunity to provide their testimony in writing for the committee. We definitely urge you to do so. And we appreciate those who've taken the time to provide it. We're going to turn now to our government witness at this time and ask that Will Liggins, Director of the DC's Revenue Bond Program, and whoever else on this team plans to testify to come forward. If you could, Ms. Liggins, if you don't mind taking a seat in the center, yeah. And then I'm gonna ask you to raise your right hand so I could swear you in before you sit, if you don't mind. Thank you. Do you swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Council of the District of Columbia and the Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us here at the council in person. When you're all settled in, you can begin your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman McDuffie and members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. I am William Liggins, and I serve as the Director of the DC Revenue Bond Enterprise Zone Program, a function within the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. I am testifying today to request on behalf of the National Links Trust, Incorporated, that the Council approve the issuance of District of Columbia revenue bonds to National Links Trust. The proposed revenue bond issuance would be in one or more series in the amount not to exceed $80 million. National Links Trust has requested that the District of Columbia issue up to $80 million of District of Columbia revenue bonds in one or more series to authorize and provide the loan of the proceeds of the bonds to assist National Links Trust, the borrower, in financing, refinancing, or reimbursing of costs associated with authorized project pursuant to Section 490 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. The bonds, if issued, will be secured by a general obligation of National Links Trust and will be without recourse to the District of Columbia. Based upon the information set forth in the application, the Revenue Bond Program staff has determined that the proposed project complies with criteria for approval of a proposed financing transaction through the district's Revenue Bond Program. Additionally, the proposed project will promote housing, education, trade, and commerce, enhance employment opportunities, and contribute to the community betterment. This concludes my testimony. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony this morning. I do have some questions that I'd like to ask about this measure. And just to be clear, I know for your office, you do a lot of these bond measures, but I think sometimes it's not clear to the public what the impacts are or who the impacts are on. But Mr. Liggins, will the approval and distribution of the revenue bonds before us today, if approved, have any fiscal impact on district residents?
No, they will not.
So to clarify, will the approval and distribution of revenue bonds result in any sort of tax increase on district residents?
No, they will not.
Does the approval and distribution of these revenue bonds take funding away from other district-funded projects?
No.
And have you taken the opportunity to explain to the applicant that these bonds are not the district's liabilities to
Yes.
assume?
Yes, we have.
And have you done the due diligence within the office to determine that the borrower is a qualified applicant under all required, I'm sorry, but let me start that again. Have you determined that the borrower is a qualified applicant under all applicable requirements?
Yes, we have.
And have you determined that the bonds will be used to finance a project that is authorized to receive funding through the District of Columbia?
Yes, it is.
And is the borrower able to service the debt resulting from the proposed financing to your knowledge?
Based upon the financial feasibility letter, yes.
And so just, you had a number of witnesses talk about this, this bond, PR 26-34 being risky to the District of Columbia. How do you respond to that?
It is not risky to the district. It is the total responsibility of National Links Trust, so there's no recourse to the district.
What's your understanding of the proposed timeline to complete this project?
It's been I guess what I would say a tad bit delayed due to making sure that they have the other needed approvals that they spoke to earlier today. But I know they want to close as quickly as possible to get started first on the Rock Creek location and look to close and start on the other locations as well.
Okay. And I know our office has gotten a lot of input, feedback, testimony from residents, mostly in opposition to the district's approval of this bond because of the concerns that they raise around the environmental impact on the community, on the city, on residents of the city. Have you heard those concerns today? Obviously, you were in the hearing room, but have you gotten any concerns from residents with?
I mean, we've heard those concerns from the time the application was submitted.
Which was when?
Which was almost over a year ago now.
Okay.
Which delayed our normal timing process to make sure that they received all the additional approvals that they spoke to earlier.
And it's your knowledge that they have gotten all the approvals that they have been required to get up to this point?
Yes.
Such as this application for, such as this resolution, if approved by the council, would meet all legal requirements under the District of Columbia?
Yes.
Again, speaking to all the voices of the witnesses and concerns that they raised legitimately around the Rock Creek Golf Course in particular, bearing in mind that there's 3 courses that would be impacted and funded through this bond if approved, including Langston Golf Course in East Potomac. But all the concerns that we heard today, is DMPA required to assess potential environmental impacts to determine whether a project is authorized to receive revenue bonds?
Not as part of our revenue bond process.
Okay. And are you aware, as a part of your revenue bond process, whether Department of the Environment, DC Department of Energy and Environment, to be clear, whether there's any role that they've had to play in order for you to get to this point within your office with respect to this bond?
To the best of my knowledge, they have made that connection with Department of Environment and moved through their process as well.
Okay. Who did DMPA use as its bond counsel on this project?
That would be ORC.
Okay. And do you know, and are you aware of who National Links Trust uses borrowers counsel?
They're using Frager, Drinker, Biddle, and Reef.
Are either of those firms CBE?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna again remind you of I think the need to really reach out to engage with our CBE community and around the use of borrowers council and bond council on these opportunities. And if there's anything that you have in the planning and the works to engage CBEs, if you can extend an invitation as you have in the past to my office, I think I would like to participate personally in any next event that you all have engaging the CBE legal community around the opportunities to provide these sorts of services.
Definitely.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions for you at this time. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to the record?
Not at this time.
Okay. Please follow up with the committee if there is anything else that you'd like to add to the record that we have before us for this matter. I'd like to thank every witness who testified on both measures on our agenda today. As a reminder, those interested in submitting written testimony for the record may do so until 5 p.m. on February 14th, 2025. Submissions should be uploaded via the hearing management system on the council's website at dccouncil.gov. Again, that website is the hearing management system on the council's website, and it's dccouncil.gov. There being no further business before the Committee on Business and Economic Development, this marks the end of today's public roundtable. The time is now 12:03 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.